until the Lord allows it. Wait 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 until the Lord allows it.
Yeah, I mean, the way, this is still evolving, but honestly, it just comes down to this is just easier for me to coordinate these talks this way. And yeah, people can join in, and then when we're done, I record and edit and send it online.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, originally why I reached out was because I had hosted that first God Pill discussion with a friend of mine, and we had a bunch of people show up. It seems like there's kind of a moment right now culturally where people are interested in God, and then you joined, I guess, like later on in there, and I just felt like the stuff that you were saying, I really actually appreciated it. It was like very sincere, and I just was kind of interested more in learning about your relationship with God, and yeah, any insight you have on like why are people talking about God so much right now?
Right. That's a those are all good reasons. I think it's much more my thing, and I don't know if I don't know how much people are talking about God any more than they normally do, but I just I find myself in my life kind of it keeps coming up, so um, I talk about it, so um,
Yeah.
but I've got so many kind of I just find it to be such a fascinating subject. Not to say anything about how I feel personally about it. It's just I think that uh, I had this experience a few years ago where I went to a friend of mine's wedding in Minnesota, and and there were just a few friends from both sides. I was friends with the groom, and some of the bride's friends were there from out of town. They were coming in from the city, from New York or something like that, or maybe from California. Anyway, um, there was a small ceremony and all that, and but it was a Catholic wedding, and and I remember we were all kind of like sat in a circle, later on in in the eve, and I just got the feeling, it seemed they were like, I think they were actors or something like that. There's some friends that were some of the bride's friends were actors, and they seemed a little bit like they seemed kind of irreligious. Let's put it that way. Um, and not that I'm religious, or that even the bride and the groom were religious or anything like that, but it was a Catholic wedding, so there actually was some some religiousness there, and I just decided to kind of shake things up a little bit and just start. And I brought up the topic about God, and instantly it the reactions that I was getting from this couple in particular, uh, that were friends with the bride, the bride's best friends or whatever, and they just started to have this sort of like extremely almost a catatonic fit or something like that. Like it was a little bit like they were just it was like misfire. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a kind of like they were glitching a bit because
Yeah.
because they were really unable to deal with even any mention of the word God. Like I mean, f- they were so uh, morally or just every fiber of their being was just completely repulsed or just it just triggered the worst kind of defensive mechanisms in them, and they basically started to almost kind of spit reasons out as to why God was this terrible thing, or why why are you saying him? Why are you saying like they came up with everything. It just they started to turn it into it's just like everything in their being just sort of like was resistant to even the discussion or like even me bringing it up, and it really it felt like it was almost a kind of a weird kind of like it felt like Ghostbusters, like where like where like you've got kryptonite and you're kind of like you could draw out the devil just by just by just by sort of mentioning God. It's really weird. It was a surreal thing, and the groom kind of caught on to what I was doing and was laughing his head off because he knew exactly what I was doing, and how odd it was. It was so strange, and it really it reminds me a lot of like a lot of what's the political landscape that we've found ourselves in. So maybe that's something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know, it's interesting. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with kind of a current uncertainty in the world. I've also talked to some other people about this, and I've heard, other reasons like, that it was kind of a transgressive, aesthetic to take on at the moment, but it doesn't feel like it's necessarily that superficial for a lot of people, maybe for some,
You
but
know, well, I mean, it was just to me, it felt like it was. I mean, I feel like it's interesting because what I find very interesting about it is with the with the Christian Bible, or in particular, uh, or the I don't know what I guess the Revelations or whatever, or the Book of John. Sorry, the Book of John. Yeah, um, that it just sort of like this is like a prophecy that was made so long ago, uh, and there's it's it's sort of it's a scary piece of literature, and and just the way that it sort of has this uncanny way of sort of actually being true, or like it's like it seems like it's the predictions in it, uh, the sort of the signs that we're of end time sort of. I mean, I suppose that in any age it could be construed as being um, possibly like true. Like I mean, oh yeah, we're all like getting close to end times and all this kind of stuff, but it really it's not that easily discountable because it's really it's a conundrum. It's weird. I think that that the book the I think one of the signs is that that of the coming of the Antichrist and all this kind of stuff is that the world will sort of be one where it will sort of get rid of God, or there'll be one religion. It'll be sort of like after this whole thing, and that's definitely the direction we're going in. I mean, like, there's no doubt about that. And I mean, and the Book of John was made at a time when there was no he had no idea that we would that the world would be completely engulfed with the awareness of Jesus. So I find it really interesting that that it got those two things right.
So as far as like you mentioned, you I guess there's a moment at their friend's wedding or whatever after the wedding that the topic came up. Was there like another moment besides that where you started to explore this more, or I'm just kind of curious, just in general,
Oh
when
no,
you
I
started
had
thinking
already.
about it more?
I just brought that up just to show, just to indicate. I mean, I think when I was like 27 years old, I mean, I was raised Jewish my entire life. I didn't have any Jesus in my youth, so I kind of came to accept Jesus into my heart, I suppose, or I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, there's something. I feel like I have a unique relationship to spirituality due to my upbringing, and I've got certain a certain perspective that's a little bit unique, and I also think that Judaism has a strange kind of almost paradoxical kind of relationship to God and spirituality, and it's a kind of vague, and people don't really understand it if they weren't raised that way. I wasn't raised religiously Jewish by any means, but I was I was a Reformed Jew, but but it was enough to basically for me to understand certain things, I've understood everything through the prism of history through that lens, and so I definitely see myself as both Jewish and Christian as well. So and that happened to me when I was 27. I would say when I fully came to embrace Jesus, and I did so for various reasons, which I'm not fully. Um, I don't necessarily think it's the normal avenue of going there, but I
Can you
I, I, I
can you share
definitely.
more about that, or?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I've got a very uh, sort of I've got an interesting take on it. I mean, I think that it's I love talking to witnesses uh, about it because the persuasive arguments are very much what I'm into. Um, I think that I think what's interesting is that there's so many different reasons to embrace it, uh, and and none of them are very obvious, and but they seem to resonate with me as reasons, and they don't necessarily have to do with some sort of like some sort of like actual contact with Jesus. Like he didn't show up in my bedroom or anything like that, and I didn't see him. It was much more a case of it dawning on me that there was no escaping him. Like there was just he was everywhere and around me, and it seemed like culture was denying him on the one hand, but his all of his footprints were everywhere. All of his there's traces of him everywhere, and you can't really just throw you just can't really just. There seemed to be this effort to sort of throw out everything that wasn't that was superfluous in the Bible, or except for him. I mean, like no, there was this impulse to keep the Bible, keep everything else about Scripture except for the God part, and it didn't really make sense to me because I mean, we have what has come from it. What do we take from it aside from Jesus? Well, we take people have well, for instance, like people like believe in ghosts or aliens or all these metaphysical things, but they somehow don't believe in God. They kind of like, they do believe in spiritual things. They do believe in these sort of shadowy kind of like uh, mysteries, occultish mysteries, these forces.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't. But then there's they save their realism for their skepticism for God. It's like the one thing that they basically don't want to believe in. They're scientists. They're into all these other things, but they allow all the possibility of all these other things, all these other mysteries, all these other metaphysical entities that I just noticed that there's with secular people, with people that aren't religious, this they do have a spiritual bent. It's just misapplied. It's somewhere else. It's just and they just have made a specific choice to reject the God part. Um, and
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing. What makes you such a smart and sensible person? Why would you get rid of God? I mean, if you believe in aliens, if you believe in if all these other things could possibly be, I mean, I don't know, phantoms, demons, ancient mysteries, occult mysteries, divinations, all these kinds of things. I mean, if you can just sort of entertain those things, if you can entertain the reality of those things, if you believe that there's some sort of like evil force in the world right now, if you can say evil, I mean, that's sort of, you would want to probably keep the most important part open, at least.
Yeah.
To but it seems like that's the one part that they want to get rid of more than anything, and that's evidence to me that they have no grounding, and that these other entities are actually demons, because they do have we're subject to their influences, and there's whatever kind of influence, whether you're talking about words. These things are just incantations, man. I don't see any difference between a word and a uh, 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 between prayer and an incantation, let's say, like a spell. Well, what distinguishes a prayer from a spell? Well,
Yeah.
it's we're just repeating words, aren't we? I mean, we're just repeating. What do you mean by repeating? Oh, well, no, we have these words, and the words are as good as intention, right? I mean, and how do you divine these things? They're invocations. I mean, you repeat the words, you say the words over and over again if you want to divine or invoke these beings. Or what beings? Oh, well, the words, what they mean. So all of a sudden you have these words. If you think about words as being these sort of um, these little helper gods, for these little sort of miniature entities that have like sort of like their own life, and they sort of like outlast human lifetimes. I mean, essentially they generations exchange in them. I mean, they pretty much just use us to keep themselves alive. I mean, every word that we've carried on and learned from 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 our parents or from somebody else. I mean, it's just basically like, we're just vessels for the words we're using. to sort of live on forever, right? I mean,
that is interesting. That's actually something I definitely want to explore more, because I've actually even recently have thought about this, like really within the last couple weeks, was talking about how like even God's name was too holy to say, and right, and so they, eventually we created another symbol to represent the name of God, right? Yahweh was spelled, it was the Tetragrammaton. But it's interesting, like it even says, like, Jesus' name is above every other name. That's interesting to me.
well,
And
I've got lots of feelings about that. That's one of the things that I think is unique with Judaism. I mean, I think the Jews intentionally were trying to. Their goal was a little bit different from Jesus's goal, obviously. And I mean, I think that they were concerned with. Um, they were concerned with sort of leaving as little trace of their God. Uh, they didn't want anybody to basically to seize on it and to find it. I mean, like the whole point was that they had a very portable God that was in their minds, and everybody could carry it in their hearts with if they knew the the language. And the Hebrews, like the the actual word for word uh, replication of the Torah and all this kind of stuff. The the desire to sort of never have to worry about it being lost in translation. The sort of the literal um, word for word uh, survival of the language for that purpose, so that they could read it in the language it was written in. That was and then to give God all these different names. You can refer to God as Elohim. I mean, or El and Yahweh. Um, there's
Jehovah
Adonai.
Jireh, yeah, they had
Adonai.
all those
There's all
names.
these different names, but I think it's much more about sort of it's meant as a sort of like as a means of moving the goalposts so that nobody who was from the outside could study it and seize on it and then basically claim it and then exploit it. I mean, I think that was the whole code of the Jews, was just to basically like preserve something that like couldn't be destroyed, something that couldn't be um, corrupted, and that was their sort of primitive mission statement. Like, I mean, they wanted to. I mean, they just wanted to get back to Israel. That was their goal. But uh, but I think that like Jesus, in as being the the best Jew, arguably that there ever was, um, he he knew that he had to basically advance a bigger project than the one that the Jews were obsessed with, and I think that he used the language of the Torah to sort of convince other Jews very convincingly that that there was that it really wasn't about the literal uh, words that you were using. That makes the difference. I mean, he spoke in parables for a reason, because he was trying to elucidate the meaning, which the words can be corrupted. Actually, we can have the same words, but they can mean something completely different depending on who's saying them. And it's really easy to sort of be led down the wrong path and be and have truth obfuscated by actually just seizing on the words and the definitions of the words, and making sure and thinking that those things are the stabilizing element in all of it. And I think his point was that no, the meaning of what I'm saying is much more important, and that's why he spoke in parables. I mean, he never answered anything straightforward. He was always kind of telling a story to actually explain his ideas, which I think is brilliant. as far as some sort of rhetorical argument is concerned. It's like almost like it's just very, very, very interesting. I think it's a very
Yeah.
persuasive argument. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I do. I think I think you make a good point. It's interesting. And even like to the point, the point about you were saying about the meaning and the whereas what had happened previous was that there was the law, and then there was this set of religious laws and common laws that were added onto the law, which eventually made hundreds and hundreds of laws.
Right.
And it kind of got out of context, right? Where it was a situation where you had to follow these laws, which was why the the most prestigious religious people, the Pharisees at the time, had such a bad run-in with Jesus, was because it was essentially the people who had taken things to an extreme logical conclusion that was no longer focused on God, but these words
I think,
instead.
and of course that would happen. I mean, if you think about it in like any kind of like with if you
Well, it even happens with Christians too, right?
well, but if you think about it, like what do we as Jews worship? We don't worship God. I mean, we think we are, but we worship the book, right? We worship the word, and that's that was a big, huge misstep. I mean, I think that like from the get go, there was a we were trying to have a communion with God. We believed what we read, but humans definitely wrote the Bible, so there's no question that it's not the word of God. In many ways, it's if even if it was, it would be lost in translation and it would be fallible because humans would have intervened to actually transcribe it and to actually put it down. And I feel like this was a huge error on the what the Jews were actually, the God that the Jews were potentially um, uh, worshiping was not really the God per se. It was themselves. It was if you read the Bible, and we do every year, we would go over it over and over it again. I mean, it's a basically a historical document or a record of us getting it wrong with God. That's what we worship. I mean, it's basically like like watching Woody Allen movies like every day of the year. You know what I'm saying? Like we're screwing it up with God, and that's what we worship. That's what we kind of like for better or for worse, that is our spiritual karma or something like that. Like it's like we're doomed. We doom ourselves to basically like reread and retrace the steps of how we failed God every step of the way, and it's just a catalog of those missteps, and that's what we worship. That's our spiritual relationship, is just pissing God off. God, and to the point where like we Jews are very, very, they're just they say like God rebukes them, and they're like hallelujah. It's like there's no other, there's not another god that's sort of like standing by in the wings, or like some rain god, or like some flood god, or whatever, some pissed off god that's going to come in and like screw up their praise of the sun god or whatever. It's literally the same god, doing all the good stuff and bad stuff. And so there's just this sort of manic hysteria that sort of it's like hallelujah, hallelujah, the world's ending, hallelujah. There's we're free, we're enslaved, hallelujah. It's 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 a kind of it's a great um, it's an interesting I also think it's a very interesting thing how like the it was really a way for humans to consolidate all the gods that had existed, and all the paganisms and all the varieties of different sort of anthropomorphic gods, uh, and hermetic gods, and Greek gods, and just local gods that were being worshipped at the time. It's a way to consolidate them uh, you know, a under a bigger God, like the real God, and the God. This he sort of, in hindsight, subordinates all of religion prior to being, just basically, you know, he relegates those other gods to basically being angels at the best.
Well,
If not,
that's an interesting point you bring up. There's a whole kind of there's a verse, and it's in Deuteronomy, and there's actually this like scholar who goes in this quite a bit, and he talks about how there's this verse that essentially, and to your point about language and everything and corruption, is that it talks about God being in the court with other gods, and the other, it says with the Elohim. And I think Christians have generally been very, they kind of ignore that verse to mean something different, because we say, there is no God other than God, right? Well, he had created other beings in the heavens, right? Angels. They're called the divine council, and if you look into, it's weird because, like, for whatever reason, the Christian church, at least in the West, has like really not wanted to talk about any other heavenly beings other than angels for some reason. And if you look into this stuff, you're like, whoa, what the heck? It's like right in the Bible. You don't have to go to anything like outside of it to find it. And it's right there where God talks about how he had, after the Tower of Babel, he had allotted the divine council to oversee 70 nations, and
right?
they all failed. And when they failed, basically God started, they were supposed to oversee the world, and Israel was, the Jews were God's people, and the other people of the divine council were theirs, and they messed up, and they had them worship them instead of God. And then God and ultimately dethroned them, and that was kind of like the pinnacle moment with Jesus. So I actually pretty much believe that those other pagan gods were real, um and that's
Absolutely.
what hell was for them to be put there, because there's no redemption for other heavenly beings, only humans.
And what was, I mean, even if you're taking into consideration the Sethian, the sort of a pre-Gnostic,
Right.
uh, 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 these the ideas that the Bible was just basically it was there's actually a bigger there's actually originally like a more things included in it that sort of like got whittled out or like weeded out as being heretical texts, but they, I mean, when you there were crypto Jews, there were different, I'm sure there were and I guess Jesus would have been considered one of the cults that sort of emerged from that. But I would say Saint John the Baptist was another one, that there were lots of types of Jews at the time, and that were probably more or less heretical to the tradition at the time, um, and they had Hellenistic influences as well. I mean, there seemed like there was something in the air at the time when there were all these sort of these mystical sort of seers and all this kind of stuff, and so it was bound, it was something was ripe in the air at the time, after about 1,000 years or whatever of sort of just of the Pharisees sort of just settling into their sort of positions and their authority, and the corruption to sort of take place. um, but but yeah, I mean, but I mean, what is Satan anyway? I mean, Satan was a fallen angel. I mean, he was. I think angels and demons are ultimately the same thing. They're just it's a matter of perspective. They are, but I also think that like the reason that they're very real. They are gods, and I think that words are entities and they're gods themselves. They're lesser. They're inferior entities, but they all help. And I think even like within language, it's like, well, you have these smaller words in the English language. You got like and, the, in. What are they? We repeat their names too. And well, they're sort of helper gods to there's sort of smaller gods that sort of help the bigger concepts, like the
Right. But
word.
yeah, I would say they appear as gods to us, right? Because we're not hyperdimensional.
Well, we've kind of subordinated them. We've made them into like little. We take it for granted that we sort of have a command of language, that we sort of tamed language. We use language to our intentions. Like we don't let language. We really don't like to think about language as being sort of working on us. As much as we think of us as sort of just kind of like grabbing a horse by the reins. We steer it, and that's key. But I think that we take it for granted that it wasn't necessarily the case. I think I think that starts from a place of having awareness of God first.
Yeah.
In ourselves and in our and in our experiences in our youth, and we have to sort of have that center. We have to have that awareness first before we can actually kind of start to even approach the question of what are these things. We have to deny God first. I mean, everybody gets God, and then basically has to has a period where they probably have doubts, and then they have to they're confronted with a question. It's like, are you going to smite God? Or are you going to be born again? And I think that's key. I think that's for better or for worse. I think Paul is very much responsible for this aspect of it. I always like to say he WikiLeaked the story of the Jewish God to everybody, and that awareness has made its way around the world now, and so that people have to make that choice eventually. I mean, up until before the Dark Ages, it was just most people didn't know about the Jews and about the Jewish God or Jesus. So, and I think that awareness of the Jews, even I don't think Jews would be around today. I think they would be completely cold if it wasn't for Jesus actually making the rounds, and I think that they stick around just to sort of reap the residuals, or like they get like interest on the story. It's like, oh yeah, that's our God. But I think that the story of the Jews and of the Jewish God is something that everybody now knows and takes for granted. They still learn it at a very young age, but I think it's at risk of really disappearing for the and it has not disappeared yet at any point throughout history yet. I mean, you could argue that there have been secular societies and stuff like that, but we still, for better or for worse. I mean, it's 2022 today, and there's no God here, but for some reason we still sign our checks with the date 2022.
Yeah.
And what is that for? Well, why does that matter? Oh, well, because Jesus predated time. it's like to think that you could throw out the Jesus part or throw out the God part, but still go through the sort of mechanical motions of thinking better, but then kind of contextualizing yourself in history, a continuous history that is the past 2022,000 years. Seems completely odd and absent-minded. I mean, do you realize how much? I mean, our entire version of history, our archaeological records, are all in the same timeline, and if nothing else, the times we live in and that we sign our checks with and that we take for granted, if for better or for worse, it's actually I feel like the I forgot which Roman emperor actually started
Constantine.
Constantine. That's what. Okay. So Constantine was. I feel like like starting time over was was an attempt to actually guard against the end of the world happening and keeping it at bay for as long as possible, because it seems like tying it up with time and starting over more or less, we would have to get rid of time in order to fully forget what had happened. I mean, it seems like it's basically the goal for the AI, or for whatever kind of force, satanic forces out there right now. The goal is to actually get rid of any trace of God. Is to just completely get to a place where they can basically never have to have people subjected to them. Just go the way of the dinosaurs, the same way that every other religion is not around anymore. Every other god is gone. That's what these the people, or the forces today, really want to happen to the Christian God. I mean, they are desperate to basically have everyone lapse into somehow choosing to be atheistic, or choosing to deny God, and but they keep on coming up against the snag, because they really have to cancel the time, the date. You have to get rid of time, literally, in order to. I mean, you can have a sec, like your typical public school, and a country full of godless people, but you're going to still all of a sudden have to grapple with how you're going to explain to them about history. I mean, you can't really talk about history. History has to be canceled too, and that's key. But you can't get rid of history because we're in time right now. So how do you explain that? What is time? Oh well, it's 2022 years, 2222 years ago, whatever. It's like a tongue twister. Yeah, what happened then? What is that? Did time begin? No. Oh well, it's just there as a reminder that Jesus happened, and we're living in Jesus' time. So that is the snag. They can't really sweep the floor with him. They can't really get rid of him, because time is literally a reminder that he existed. That's what it was there for, so that we wouldn't forget. And so the world will not be in darkness until time itself is canceled. And I feel like we've been living on borrowed time, essentially, for the past 2022 years. If you know what I'm saying. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, actually. And as you're talking, something kind of interesting to me, I've actually never thought about canceling time, which I want to think about that some more.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, that's what I see is going to happen. I mean, that's my prophecy.
Well, and this is going to get a little conspiratorial here, but I think what's also very interesting is if you cancel time, okay, that's one thing. But I was also thinking, okay, well, even so even Francis Collins, he was the head of the Human Genome Project, right? One of maybe the most accomplished human achievements in our since we've been around on the earth. And that guy got saved. He found God on a hiking trip. He just got, I think from what I remember, he's on a mountain, and he looked over all of creation, and he just knew God was real, in his heart. Right.
Right.
And he gave his life to God. And I was thinking, well, okay, so even if creation itself can speak to people as smart as someone like that, is that where, and this is where it gets conspiratorial. I'm like, is that when you have to cancel nature as well? And is that when we all go into the metaverse?
well, what I okay. I mean, when you think about what we take from. I mean, so when you think about the fact that that Jesus predates time, really. I mean, we weren't counting down.
Well, he made it. It's a physical property, right? All creation was made.
But it also predates the axiomatic definition that we use of time in science. Okay, so it predates science as well. I mean, we have there's certain
of course.
So, but these are we literally have kept everything else but the God part. So it seems so foolish that we basically become we sort of sleepwalk through life, and we are denying the most important part of the whole thing, but we decide to keep what else, all the things that are convenient for to prove it wrong. It's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's we really it seems like we're doomed to folly if we don't think about these things, and we don't think about these things. But sci- when you have something that you shouldn't deny God, because you science has basically proven him wrong or whatever. I mean, that this is all just in line with the with the folly of the Jews. Okay, I mean, like, this is the thing that this is what everybody inherits by virtue of hearing about Jesus. Is they take in the folly of the Jews, the hubris, and the idea that they basically had a one-on-one relationship with God, which is really not the case. They were worshiping the word of man, their own folly. So I'm sorry, Christians. You guys, you guys inherited our genetic sort of uh, our, that our genetic sort of defect, essentially. Uh, it's always there. It's always there, and it's in Jesus as well. But with Jesus is actually the solution to it. It's not the not the not the offspring, so to speak. I think, but I think that, like, that 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 it sort of is the sort of the Western canon is basically the 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 sort of mark of the Jew. This idea of rebirth, and toppling the old, and sort of like, as opposed to the Chinese. I mean, like, the Chinese sort of always keeps its culture intact, even though it goes through, like, it sheds zillion revolutions, and ideologies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's just but they're always Chinese. There's always a sense of identity there with with the Jewish uh, canon. It's really just one that is basically it breaks with the other gods. It's not part of the same. It wants to restart. It wants to, I mean, Jesus was as much the end of the Jews as as uh, as anything was. I mean, he was a Jew, but he was still. They were doing it wrong. They would never get it right. Let's put it that way. So we'll never get.
Yeah, well, and I don't think. I mean, I would imagine that. I mean, God knew that. I think in some ways, like, if and I can't remember the verse, he talked about how, like, I mean, their blessing to the world was essentially that they basically performed. They performed the relationship with God, and so that we could all, like, me as a Gentile, could go back and view, like, okay, they did this on their own and they failed on their own, and
Yeah,
so
it took a long time
that
for them
was
to get there.
proof that we needed Christ.
It took them a long time to get there, though. That things that, like, that that's what we worship. We go over the fact that that Moses, that God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, and uh, and uh, and gave him the Ten Commandments, and the people, when they came down, when he came down from the mountain, and there was a there was there was anger, and the Jews were, and the people were were not following.
Raging with pagans.
Yeah, they were basically, they were getting it wrong, and that story, is there, so that, we relive it in infamy. Just we don't even know why we do it, but that's what we worship. We worship our mistakes. We worship our folly, and that's what that is. That gives us a strange a kind of a unique perspective and an advantage that other other spiritual religions or practices don't really have. I mean, it's sort of a it's sort of a it does sort of elevate the meekness and of the Jews. I mean, the Jews were not like, they didn't have an army. These were like a ragtag bunch of of bums that were roaming around the desert. And if there's any people that, like, were doomed to fail and not last, it was them. I mean, they didn't have any army or anything. And the only thing they had was their God, and that was he was portable because they could have it in their head. They didn't need to have an idol for it. They didn't need to worship it. They didn't need to point to anything and go, bow. That's bow. Bow to it. It's it's they that ended up kind of helping them. It's just to carry God in your heart. And if you know the word of God, then you'll be saved. You'll be protected. Um, and I think that, like, the idea of choice in the matter, that you just need to hear the words of God. You just need to hear the story of the Jews, basically, uh, from a witness, and learn about the story of Jesus, and then you know you can have everlasting life if you embrace if you accept Jesus into your heart. That's all. I mean, who wouldn't go for that? Who wouldn't want everlasting life? And you don't even need to say pay anything. You don't need to sign anywhere. It's like AA. It's like it's completely it's a real, as far as like things to how is that not going to, like, make its way around the world like hotcakes and like just totally succeed? That's going to that's as far as religions go, as far as uh, uh, stories go. All you need to do is basically accept it into your heart, and that's all you need to do. That's a pretty good deal. You don't even need to sign up to be a part of any church or anything like that. It's a personal relationship. So um, I think that these are the means that that God has sort of, like, he's able to transmute his form, and I think he changed he moved the goalposts once before with Jesus, and Jesus said, through me, the covenant with the Jews is no longer, it is now through me that that he speaks. And so, and I mean, as far as like, uh, aspirational goals are concerned, I mean, the Jews just wanted to go back to Israel. That's the end of the Jewish Bible. It's kind of incomplete. It's like, as far, kind of like,
Well, in 46 they got Israel back, right?
yeah. I mean, but I mean, that was arguably, like, that would have been the end. I mean, that's all that they were hoping for. That was their whole you know uh, their Hollywood ending. I mean, that was that. They didn't really see past that. So it's a pretty trite kind of petty kind of, yeah, like, yeah, you'll get back there. But what does that really do? What does that mean? That doesn't give you very much. What if you're not Jewish? uh,
But the cool
it's
thing is that God still gave it to them, even after they rejected Jesus as God.
And of course, because because he speaks through them, and because they are one and the same. God wanted us to be aware of his existence, and be able to utter the words, and to utter the history. And that's where we're in. I mean, we're completely enmeshed in this matrix. That's really just that you can't just sort of say that religion is this terrible thing that we blame it on. I mean, I think it's not religion, it's not God. It's that we're completely fools. We're just completely foolish, and we don't think about anything that we do. So we're doomed to fail. We're doomed to repeat our worst nightmares. I mean, and it's easy to imagine everything that's prophesized coming to pass. But it's hard to imagine any kind of future that doesn't include it. I mean, it just seems like, will we have this sort of, will we segue into this slavish kind of global reset AI existence where we're chattel and we don't, we'll be happy and we won't own anything and we'll be happy about it. I don't think so, man. I think that we're gonna have to cross the barrier. We're gonna have to deal with we're gonna have to. We're gonna have to deal with end times first. The book is gonna come to pass. It's just the way it is.
Well, I personally feel like I feel like we're starting to see. I think part of this renewed interest to me is that we're actually starting to see God wake people up. I honestly think we're going to see another revival, and what's so interesting about that, and I don't mean like another like American revival. I
No.
believe in my heart that there's going to be a global one, and the reason, and it's funny because I say that, and like I wrote this like kind of silly essay earlier in the year, and I had a handful of people reach out, and actually I think all of them weren't even, none of them believed in God, and they all were like, yeah, there's definitely an interesting undercurrent of Christianity, and honestly we believe that it's needed and that a revival is going to come. And these were non-Christian people telling me this, which I thought was very interesting.
Which makes total sense to me because there's nothing else that they can do. I mean, do you understand? It's I think of these. I think that the messianic prophecy and all that kind of stuff, and the second coming and all that kind of stuff, and end times and all that kind of stuff is, hope. We have not experienced end times. People don't really ever confront the apocalypse in their own life, in their own death even. I think that that it's been kept at bay, but the looming concern for it and the sort of like the dread that we have for it is part and parcel, like what makes us what we are. I mean, I think that even as Americans, throughout the Cold War and all these kinds of these nuclear fears and all this kind of stuff of total extinction and extinction events and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think that's part of our inheritance we need to basically be able to look ahead, and basically it gives us the powers of sort of anticipation to certain. It also makes us kind of paranoid too. But I think that that is inherited from the book of John, and just having that in our sort of in our fabric, and I think that that we need to, and we need to anticipate this event, whether we are Christian or not. It's in our soul, it's in our blood. It's how we operate. It gives us some sort of advantage. It gives us foresight. And I think that ultimately everybody's going to everybody should. What I find interesting is that if you don't believe in the Bible, if you don't believe in if you don't embrace Jesus, I don't see, you are quite literally making the Bible come to pass, and knowing it full and well. So I mean, so you're making, if I didn't believe in the God of the Bible, if I thought it was just a bunch of fundamentalist special, I would probably want to make sure. I probably want to care or guard against the the predictions in the Bible, which state that there will God will fall out of favor. There will be one world religion. There will be the Antichrist. There will be everybody will basically will deny God first, and there won't be any religion. So basically, like everybody will have forgotten that God existed, and that would make it come to pass. So if I didn't believe in the Bible, I'd probably want to make sure that like I didn't actually do what it predicted, because then I would be quite in line with making it come to pass. I would do it. I'd be doing it consciously. Like I mean, why would you like as of somebody who does believe in God? I keep him in mind so that the end times don't come to pass while I'm on my clock. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's weird. It's a Rubik's cube. It's a total uh, conundrum. But I think it's these are sort of like the the lock codes that that keep it from fully dying away, and to keep it important and keep it necessary. We need to basically not forget that we're living uh, before the end times. I mean, some people would say that that end times have already passed, and it was meant to happen like the same generation as Jesus. But I don't know about that. I mean, I think that it didn't happen. So
Yeah, I'm under the kind of subscribe to the idea that the end times has been started after Christ left and the Holy Spirit came. And
yeah,
since
and I
then,
think
we've kind of been in it, but we're ramping. You're eventually ramping up towards something.
we're in much the same way that like the Jews were just wanted to get back to Israel, and the end times were supposed to. Some people might say that the end times were supposed to happen in that generation, or not long after. Uh, but I think that that is starting the world over, and giving everybody WikiLeaking the story of Jesus to everyone is quite that's that's keeping him alive. I mean that the word of mouth kept him alive beyond his funeral. You know what I'm saying? So we are quite literally spiritually. We're living in a world where we can't really forget him yet. We are trying to. The world is trying to uh, to uh, shrug him off, and try to make try to they're trying to make him irrelevant, and they're insulting him and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's foolish, because that's actually making the Bible as true as possible. So it's an act of worship on the part of everybody who's not religious at this point. Uh,
Hey, what speaking of worship, I'm curious, how do you worship?
it's a good question. I it's a personal thing. So I just have a relationship with Jesus in my heart. It's just I don't attend church. I don't. I have a very personal relationship with him. I came to him in a unconventional way, and I keep him in my heart in an unconventional way. And maybe it's not a community thing. It's a very personal thing, and I take Jesus's word as my um, as my guide for that. When he's in the temple, and he says you know all these all these all the rituals, all these shows of faith, and all the kind he insults everybody with their piety and all that kind of stuff, and the Pharisees, sort of making a mockery by making everybody attend synagogue or whatever, and uh, and do go through these motions that are basically like kind of sh- just almost like kind of showing that everybody's just brainwashed in the same way, and showing fealty to some sort of other thing. It's not it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with it will be personal. It always is personal, and it has to be personal to everybody. And I think that um, it's very it's for me that's what's important. I mean, I can entertain all these things uh,
Yeah.
in any number of ways. I'm not trying to even convince anybody, but I have the point is that I don't get hung up on the different.
Yeah. And that's not, and I guess I wasn't asking if there's any kind of like ritual or prayer or anything. I was just kind of curious, like, for me, I spend a lot of time, um, well, now actually recently, I would say I spent a lot of time, like actually literally on my face. Where I didn't do that before, but I feel compelled to do that now. And like, so, music, I was listening, I was praying earlier, and I just had like water music too on,
Oh wow,
and I just used that as like my worship music. And
water
um,
music. You mean Todd Dockstarter?
no, William Basinski.
Oh, wow, okay, got you. There's
No, but
you should listen to Todd Dockstarter though. It's actually he's got something called water music as well.
oh, I'm looking it up. Water
Yeah,
music. It's
Todd
what's the
Dockstarter.
is that
He's a
jazz?
no. He's a experimental. He was actually he did soundtracks for some Hollywood stuff back in the day, but he does tape manipulations. He's like kind of an electronic whiz.
Oh,
He
okay. But
uses
interesting.
just like water samples to make these, and going through generators and stuff like that to make these really intense ambient sort of pre-new
Oh,
age kind of.
cool.
It's so good, man. Like he's a titan. But he was I
I'm
think
gonna check.
he was obsessed with Karl Heinz Stockhausen. He was very
Oh, okay.
yeah. So he was very he knew what he was doing.
Earlier, I was listening to Ambulance for Christ earlier with an old.
Oh yeah, that's a throwback.
Actually, Tyler, I think in here, one of the listeners, he was the one that was told me I needed to talk to him at some point, and so I was like, I need to go through that discography again. But yeah, and so for me, that's kind of like I listen to music, I pray. Sometimes the Lord will speak to me, and I'll create stuff out of it. I'm not an artist, but like sometimes I got to make something to pray to, because there's a lot of stuff a lot of worship music I listen to is very contemporary, and it's not the style I would care for, but I don't care. I'm agnostic to that. I just want to be able to worship, and
That's
so
great. That is what it is, man. Like I think that I meditate. Somebody asked me if I meditate. Like, do you ever meditate? You ever do yoga? It's like, well, nah. I draw. I write. I make music. I get inspired. Those are that I worship.
oh, you cut out for a second. You said those are all
I
what?
don't really. I don't need. I mean, that is my meditation. Like it is a way to clear my mind. It is a way to take to listen to something else, to some sort of other power that's coursing through me. I don't it doesn't talk to me per se. Exactly, but it's just it is a place of peace in my soul. So for better, for for what it's worth. Yeah, it's and I used to be, I grew up, listening to death metal, black metal, all the, lots of heretical stuff, lots of, but when you also think about like the history of uh, pop music and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's all, for the most part, it's Christian. It's it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, when you
I think we spoke about that before on Twitter, right? A little bit.
it's completely. What Little Richard. I mean, that's Tutti Frutti. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's he's religious, dude.
Well, from what I
a love
there's a
song is religious.
there's a
They don't need
study.
it. Doesn't need to
Or
be
not
like
study.
singing in church, but but most everybody that I mean, all gospel music is religious. It's all religious, man. It's all It's all sort of.
Well, the interesting thing about that is actually when you look at rock and roll. So actually, when rock and roll became mainstream, the Pentecostal church was actually upset because they were calling all the people that were becoming mainstream sellouts, because they were like, that was the music we were using to worship, and now it's out on the radio. And like even Elvis and Little Richard, like they all
he's
modeled
got
their
a snake in his
style.
pants. He's got a snake in his pants.
Yeah.
He's writhing.
Well, they apparently even modeled their styles after some of the traveling evangelists of the time.
No, it's
So
clear. It's obvious.
yeah, so it's interesting to me actually, and it's funny. You're chopping up a little bit. Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, cool. So, no, you were saying something. I didn't. I didn't mean to interrupt, but what was that you were saying something about something
Yeah,
about.
I was saying that I don't know if you caught it or not, but I was just saying that like rock and roll had really had its roots in the Pentecostal church, and
Right.
when it left, the Pentecostals were essentially like, "Hey, you guys sold out," and
Right.
Little Richard and Elvis, they had borrowed their styles from some of the traveling evangelists at the time, and like supposedly Elvis had like tried to mimic one of the evangelist's voices. That's how he got his distinctive sound or whatever. And that actually kind of like made me look into other music in general to see what other genres like that had started maybe in the church that didn't get recognition. And there's actually a handful of them, man. It's interesting. Like even like death metal, like Trouble,
well, just the whole sermon, the whole idea of like there being sort of this animated,
right,
person like at the front, like in front of other people, in front of a congregation, and him just sort of just like going off like Alex Jones. I mean, like that's all. It's all that's the legacy. I mean, that's the same thing. And I mean, it's all this sort of like drama. That's I mean, I think it's also it's kind of like Greek drama too, but it's a little bit more. I feel like it's more Christian. But yeah.
So, all right. So we were talking earlier about you said you got, and I don't know, maybe this is too personal. If it is, that's fine. You said you came to Jesus in an unconventional way, and I did as well. And so I'm just kind of curious if that's something you share or not. I'm just interested in what that means.
Well, I've had. Well, let's put it this way. I, as I was skeptical prior to reading scriptures and to learning about his life and all that kind of stuff. And of course I watched movies that sort of were bastardizations of. I mean, I think I saw the Last Temptation of Christ when I was younger, and I liked it as a movie. It was Martin Scorsese, great movie. But I learned about it in a very kind of in a very unrigorous way. Let's put it that way. I mean, I wasn't like going to Sunday school or anything like that, and I certainly never have had too much care for the convention, and or I haven't been like respectful of. I didn't. I wasn't a member of a congregation or anything like that, or and so it was kind of like my own path and my own reasoning behind how I got there, and a lot of it has to do with the idea that like even if Jesus is not the Son of God, I would still say, even if he were a con artist, if he was a total charlatan, like and he was falsely giving us hope for an afterlife, like for everlasting life after we die. even if that were the case, if he was, and the truth is, we all just sort of just stop existing, and it's all a lie. So we, what's the point of believing in it? Even if that were the case, I would be down with his I'd be down with him. I'd be down with him because because what are the alternatives? You have to imagine, like, what ceasing to be is just. I don't necessarily think it's what everybody else thinks that it is. I think that's all wishful thinking. Not existing. You think? I mean, do we go back to the same void that we started from? No, it can't be that. There's different voids. There's different places. There's a difference between never having been born and dying. It's I think that these are all, like, it really is life. Life is what you make it. Then it matters. How did I come to the place that I am? How did I get myself out of all sorts of slumps? I mean, I think that I believed in myself a little bit. I sort of trusted in myself. I had faith in myself, and it's brought me to the place where I am, and part of that journey has been believing in something greater than. I don't think it's pointless. I don't think the life is pointless. I think if I was sort of just following some con man who was basically misleading me and telling me that, like, that there was everlasting life if you or making me scared, or that I was going to go to hell if I did the wrong things in this life, I would I appreciate that. I think that, like, that he's just trying to con us into doing good things while we're alive, and so that we don't. Sometimes fear is like is a big motivator. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's just the point is that, like, what he's saying is that maybe people maybe people need to be scared into doing good things while they're alive and not screwing things up. Maybe it matters. Otherwise, you could get very nihilistic about it. You can get completely. You can end up believing that you're God yourself. That you're your own God, and what would stop you from going postal? I don't know.
Yeah. Was there like a moment where, like, you felt like it was, like, official, or did it, like, gradually happen? You look back, you're like, oh yeah, like,
it happened pretty. It happened at one time. I mean, there's been. I've had several different epiphanies throughout my life that more or less, that sort of, like, hammer the point in. But I haven't, like, really, like, had too many kind of fully shedding moments in my life. Where, like, I quit something and I make a huge a huge break with everything that I've thought in the past. I mean, I feel it for me. It's a continuum, and it's and I just I don't feel like I've ever been all that like I've ever been too deluded. But I think I'm a naive person, and I'm very simple in a lot of ways. So either I'm either a 1 or a 9 or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm on my last life or my first life. I don't know. I don't. I just I kind of don't even know. But I just have I just believe what I believe, and I kind of it all sort of has to make sense for me, and even though there's lots of things I don't know, everything's sort of like has to fills this sort of puzzle in my mind that everything has to make sense holistically. So So,
was there any sort of like, did you feel anything?
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, well, you mean like a was there like a physical feeling,
Yeah.
like a physical
Or
um, I would say that no, there's been a I don't have feelings. I don't feel my body ever. I think I'm not aware of my body enough, probably. Uh, but but that's because I live in my head. But you know, I, I kind of I kind of I forgive myself a lot of my shortcomings because I kind of feel like they're that my upbringing sort of kind of pre sort of it's sort of like prepared me for this. You know, I mean that growing up Jewish sort of like gave me a certain sense of being single minded and sort of not I never had to worry about feeling like I needed other people to accept me all that much. Like I kind of think there's a sort of a praise of the of the of being different. Being sort of like being being an outsider. There's not the idea of not being normal has never been a problem for me because I think I was raised in being Jewish kind of prepares you for that. I don't know, but I think that I think of it as like this. I mean, I think that like Jesus sort of like represents what the sort of the ideal, what you should aspire to be essentially. So I try to walk in his footsteps. So that's for better or for worse. That's what it is. But I also think that like we pray to him in many ways, whether we know it or not. So in in ritual and in the course of our culture and all that kind of stuff, I think people are like they're just sleepwalking through it. They don't know that these are they don't realize that like they're being guided by some other hand, and they're doing all the rituals and all the different actions, but they're not like doing them with intention. So it's a little bit different.
what do you know about the Holy Spirit?
Uh, well, the Holy Spirit is it? That's the part of the Trinity, right? I mean, that's
Yeah, God's Spirit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So and I mean, there's the Holy Spirit, and there's the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then but then there's there's the Trinity, and then there's the quatrain, and there's I don't know. I mean, what do you think about Carl Jung? Does that kind of do you find anything uh, uh, particularly appealing about him or unappealing? I mean, what is your
Um,
take on it?
I I've been kind of childish about not reading Carl Jung just because everyone does, and I don't know. So I just decided I just would see everyone else on Twitter talk about it all the time instead.
Talk to right. Like you can always have Geo kind of weigh in
Exactly.
on. uh, what about Freud? Do you same thing?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I've obviously like I've done like the Wikipedia overview, but I generally, the time when I was getting into all of that stuff is right around the time when I
When you had
found
your
Jesus,
yeah.
and and it's not like I just got so obsessed with Jesus. I really just wanted to read more about him than, and not to say that other things aren't valuable to read about. There's definitely a lot of theory I've read in the past and still tend to read into, but I don't go into it as deep as I probably would have had I not found Jesus, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get it. And I
Uh,
mean, I obviously having a family starting so young really keeps you from straying too far down any other path. It's like you only have time for so many things.
Yeah, I used to read a lot more than I do now. But I honestly, I don't know. For me, like the moment right now, for me, there's like just like this. I definitely used to like put a lot of stock in wanting to be like very well read, and a lot of my friends are, and just the circles I hang in generally, everyone's a lot smarter than I am at this point. And every year they get smarter because they read, and I don't know. The last couple of years, I've just really felt an urgency of like really getting to know God better, and so I spend most of my time doing that. Like it's, and I'm not trying to say that that's like some sort of like me trying to be some sort of spiritually enlightened person. It's just I'm like you were saying earlier, I'm just kind of like a normal dumb person, and I am just I don't know. It's not even really me anymore. It's just kind of like God puts this like fire in me just to spend time with him, and it's because I can't even do it on my own without him like pushing me into it. I'm so
I
lazy.
I like. There's something about it. There's something about it that keeps me coming back to it because obviously there's so many firsts that happen with him that it can't be ignored. I mean, there's just people just take things so much for granted. There's a reason why we don't obsess over the Epic of Gilgamesh, even though it predates Jesus. It's cool. It's really neat. It's really cool. It might have been something. Might have been like some sort of like epic milestone. During the Roman era, even oh yeah, the Library of Alexandria. We got the real Epic of Gilgamesh, man. Like check it out. But I don't think that it really matters because the real milestone for us was Jesus, and
That's
for
a
me,
good point.
and for me, it's it's like at a crossroads. I mean, Jesus meets right in the middle. We've pretty much got about as much time on the opposite end of for Judaism. I mean, the Jewish calendar and the Jewish history is it's roughly 2,000 or less than 2,000 years probably before Jesus. So we're kind of like right there, like he kind of like exists as this sort of like centrifugal force for like for my constellation of awareness. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I also like that it's an unpopular choice, and I like to do unpopular things.
Yeah. That's kind of where and I'm kind of like that as well. And so I resonate with that. You've actually probably have gone further than I have in that regard, but that being said, God has been speaking to me a lot about being a fool for him, right? And it says like the foolish things of the world, the world will count it as foolishness, right?
Yes.
And Paul talks about, when I'm out of my mind, it's for God. When I'm in my right mind, it's for you. And so I've been hearing that a lot, and I've been thinking, okay, what does it take to be a fool for Christ? And it essentially means that you have to care zero about what anyone else thinks.
It means you have to love him, because I mean, what is to be in love is to have full blinders, man. Like, I mean, it's a total it's a foolish thing. You feel sorry when you see your kids dating somebody or fully in love. I mean, they're just you have to kind of like take the bib and wipe the drool off from their face. It's like they don't think clearly.
And it's interesting, by serving your kids, you actually grow to love them more.
Oh, and yeah, and I mean, and child is father of the man, as Brian Wilson says. I mean, for
I love
sure.
that song.
Yeah, I mean, it's couldn't be more true. And I mean, I'm experiencing it um, right now for the first
It's
time.
it's I would say the more you can serve them, the better. Like even like just I don't know. It's like the way God designed us, right? It's like otherwise, if we didn't, I don't know. It's like when we serve someone else, it's like you grow in love for them. It's a really strange thing, and I think that's evolutionarily, I think God designed it that way too, so that way we didn't like strangle our kids because they can drive you crazy. You're just
Well,
so in love with them.
and I mean, he definitely he made man and woman come together, and fooled them into loving each other. He made a man horny, and he made the woman, beautiful, so that one could fool the other into having that union, and then and then perhaps uh, uh, the sin, the sin of Adam, the uh, the unawareness, but I think that is what the story is about. I mean, it's but I think that, like, we don't. I think it's a mistake to say that that's a terrible thing. I mean, I think
Well, yeah,
it's a wonderful thing. It's what makes the world go round. I actually believe that stupidity and foolishness is actually what makes the world go round, not intelligence. It's
I
it's
agree.
it's absolutely. I mean, thank goodness for it. Thank goodness that, like, but I think anything that any kind of push towards being conscientious, anything that you do that's considered intelligence, is likely to get in the way of everything that works perfectly, without even thinking about it. So I think the only thing that has kept humanity going is sheer stupidity. I mean, it's like it's the fact that we haven't gotten in the way. Nobody's figured out a way to basically, uh, uh, nobody's been looking at the right things in order to stop humanity from being. They haven't figured out a way to kill everybody off. At the same time. That's there's bombs can only do so much. Um, you can blow up the whole world, but I feel like everything with I think there would still be people alive after that kind of thing. That it wouldn't work. I mean, it wouldn't work to just blow everybody up, or get. You'd have to get everybody in the same spot. It's just so bombs are not good enough. That the this is where what I think the ultimate goal of this AI, this forces. I mean, this I really do feel like it's trying to consolidate everybody. Get everybody, like, on the, it's drinking the same Kool-Aid, and having the same poison, and being synced up together on the same clock, so that they can basically, say, press the button, and basically everybody will just basically be, will die at the same time, and that will be it. So you can't. The point is that's what intelligence has brought us. That's the gift of technology, and that's the curse. So we have to go back to nature, reject this, panopticon. Uh, but I think that, like, I think it's a foolish thing that, 'cause that technology is so dead set on advancing without having a spiritual center. I mean, I think that's really suicidal. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm obviously not like anti-technology. I think that's God's given us the insight to make this stuff. But
It's all his work, but
it's being
there.
used. It's being used incorrectly, right?
It's being used to bring about the what was prophesized, and that is what I'm saying. That's how everything is worshipped. Whether you know it or not, you're fulfilling some aspect of the prophecy. So it's just, in a sense, we're being heretical by sort of, like, pushing, by resisting, in a sense. I mean, by wanting good things, by not wanting to sort of, by wanting to stay human and all this kind of stuff, and even championing the fallible, championing foolishness. It's we're doing our part, but so are but the others are doing their part too, and nobody's been able to sort of completely derail the sort of the narrative that's already been rolled out in front of us. I mean, we all know what it is. So it's really weird. It's really weird. It's we what I'm thinking is just if what would you want if you could have it your way? What would be, if you could imagine a glorious end? Would it be silence? Would it be just like darkness? Would it be peace? Would it be just like absent mind? Sleep? I mean, what would it be? It's like, would it be paradise? Would it be like I mean, it's really whatever you make it. I think that but I think that like God actually is that thing that sort of like that can anchor. It's just there to sort of give you a chance. I mean, I think it gives you hope, and it gives you something to strive for, something to look forward to, all those things. And I mean, it keeps you doing good works at the very least.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you were saying about love, it's like when I grew up in the church, I did things because I had to, because it was like there were rules, right? And then when I left the church, and then I had my kind of Damascus Road experience and came back to God and not came to the church, right? And I do things, well, I try, at least I do things because I love God, right? I want to do stuff because I love him, right? I don't want to do things as it's not a rule anymore. It's like, well, yeah, of course I want to do this stuff because this is the guy who saved my life. So of course I'm going to like do these things because it's like, it's the least he deserves. So it's no longer an act of work. It's an act of love. And, the more I do stuff like that, it's like the more he just keeps revealing more how much he loves me. And it's like, so now I'm like, yeah, like I'm in this moment now where I'm in love, right? And I'm going to act like a fool, right? Because I'm just like, I'm super in love with God. And that's really about as far as I really even care about theology anymore after that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I like to read all this stuff, but I'm so singular focused in this moment of like, my ultimate performance in life will be to try and become 100% obedient to God in whatever form that looks like, whether it's small or big, public or not. Like, that's it for me now. So I don't know if you're still there.
Time to face the grace of God.
Walked around again.
Time to get with God. Time to face the fiery squad. Tonight. God is watching you tonight. Alright. And it's true because tonight. He's on the summer and you're face to face with God. Time to meet your God. Time to meet the Lord thy God.
But yeah, basically, like I said in the chat, was you mentioned a couple times about this unique relationship you have with Jesus, and
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you what makes that unique.
What makes it unique is that it's personal. It makes it unique because I don't do the things that people tell you have to do in order to demonstrate your devotion and that kind of stuff. The sort of ritualistic aspects, the being a part of a church, of a community. Actually,
I get you.
I'm not part of any community, and that's what I took from from his teachings. I mean, he says it explicitly, is, that it's not a community based thing. It's a personal relationship that you're going to have with him, and going to church doesn't absolve you of his judgment, and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying now. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think he talks about the benefit of being in a community, but I see what you're saying though, is that it's not hinging upon it being
part of
it
doesn't it's not that's all, that's all the sort of surface level stuff,
right.
That's the clothing, the dressing. Sure, yeah, we go to church, we believe in Jesus, but without that personal relationship with him, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean what's important anyway. But
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I found it really I find it really encouraging when there's people like you that that listen to experimental music and stuff like that, and definitely think for yourselves, and don't get bogged down with some of the trappings. I think that there's just so much cliche and so many assumptions that are made with regards to people's religion, that I think that it gets a bad rap, and that's all just trapping. That's all just wallpaper. That's all. It's just like superficial stuff. It has nothing to do with anything of any substance. I mean, I think another aspect to it is to see it as a book, and just like you would any other book, and when you start to go down the road of trying to condemn specific books, that's not a path you want to go down. It's just it's something that is there, and it's there for people to use their own judgment, or to use their own. It's there as a means for people to do what they want with it. I mean, that's part of the freedom of things. So I kind of think that it's any system or any party that's basically just wanting to ban those things is to me it's something to be suspicious of, basically.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What you're saying there, and so the other thing too, I wanted to just circle back on was something you said earlier. Like the way you found Jesus in that moment was unconventional, and that it wasn't some sort of altar call or missionary moment. I think you mentioned that it was just like you just had a moment when it became real to you. Was that right? Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yes. Yeah. It clicked with me. And it was from reading. It's from reading it. And so I can't. We're both kind of dunces when it comes to sort of like quoting Bible scripture and all that kind of stuff. But he said it explicitly, which he normally doesn't do. But that because
so that was the thing that reached out.
That really was.
It
was that it doesn't matter because I've never been much of I've never been much of a good Jew, per se. I don't know what makes me qualify as a good Jew or as a real one, or
well, I'd say you are a good Jew, right? It's that you love God,
and
you, like,
Jesus.
listen to God.
Jesus was arguably the best one. He was arguably
right.
That's the real convergence is to me. He's either like the best Jew or the worst Jew. So his reasoning was crystal clear. You know what I'm saying? Like he was able to articulate it in a way that was in its own language, and it basically it for better or for worse, it might have it might have been the snag in their plan, but that's what happens. And I think that like that's what makes his whole thing so much richer and more and the impact of it is still hard to quantify. So
Yeah, that's good, man. Well, so we can probably end it on that note, unless there's anything else you needed to end on. But
no, it should end. It should end at the end, I think.
I haven't done this before, but I'm curious what you think about this, and if not, we can edit it out. But like, would you be down to like, would you mind praying like to close it out?
Oh, I don't know how to do that, but we can do a prayer, sure. Jesus, have mercy on all your little people in the world, all the confused souls, including me, and help them see the light, and help them help illuminate and guide the way for them in these hard times, and have mercy on our souls. We know not what we do not know, and that is our problem. Not yours, but give everybody a chance. We know that there's good in the world, so we know that you do your magic every day, and it doesn't have a. I'm not saying this the right way, but you know what I mean. Wink, wink. Is that good enough? I don't know.
Amen.
Amen.
That was perfect. That sounds like how I talk to God.
Yeah. Okay, good. That was great. I really enjoyed that. And probably needed it.
Yeah, well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. It's been really awesome talking to you. And yeah, we'll chat soon. I'll send you send this when this is all done.
Okay, sounds good. All right, take care.
All right, have a good night.
Pray for me. 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 Pray for me.